Ever stop to think about what's actually protecting your stuff online? You know, when you log into your bank, jump on Wi-Fi, even just unlock your phone. There's this, like, invisible force field working away.
Yeah, it really is like an invisible guardian.
Right, and it's guarding everything from, your DMs to serious national secrets. Today, we're going to dive deep into that force. AES Encryption, the Advanced Encryption Standard.
It's the unsung hero, really.
Totally. You bump into it constantly every single day, probably without even realizing what it's called.
And what's fascinating, I think, is that AES isn't just like one way to secure data. It's become the global standard. The way it was chosen, this huge open competition, it's a story in itself.
A competition. Okay, intriguing.
Oh, yeah. Super transparent, really rigorous. The design principles are basically a masterclass in modern crypto. So our mission today really is to unpack AES for you.
Let's do it.
Figure out what it is, how it actually works under the hood, why it's considered so incredibly secure, where you're using it constantly, and importantly, where things can sometimes go wrong, not usually with AES itself, but how it's used.
Right, the implementation detail.
Exactly. Prepare for some moments, hopefully. Understanding AES is, I think, pretty crucial for anyone living in this digital world. It helps you get the why behind all this online security stuff.
Okay, let's unpack this properly then. To really get why AES is such a big deal, we kind of need to look back at what came before it. There was this thing called DES, the Data Encryption Standard.
Right, DES. It was the workhorse for ages, decades even.
But by the late 90s, it was showing its age, big time. The main issue was its key length, just 56 bits.
Yeah, 56 bits sounds like a lot, maybe, but in computing terms, especially with Moore's law trucking along, it just wasn't enough anymore.
Imagine a password that's only like 7 characters long and only uses numbers. You could crack that pretty fast, right?
Exactly. Brute forcing DES, trying every single possible key, became genuinely feasible for well-resourced attackers. It was clear that DES was living on borrowed time.
So the digital world needed something stronger.
Absolutely. And that's where NIST, the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, came in. In 1997, they did something pretty revolutionary. They launched this open international competition to find a successor to DES.
An open competition for something this sensitive.
Yeah, and that was the significant paradigm shift, as people called it. See, DES's origins were a bit murky, kind of secret, developed largely behind closed doors with NSA involvement, which made some people suspicious back in the day.
Okay, I can see that.
So NIST went the opposite way with AES. Total transparency. They held these public conferences, AES-1, AES-2, AES-3, where cryptographers from all over the world, academia, industry, government, everyone could just tear into the proposed algorithms.
Wow, so they actively wanted people to try and break them.
That was the whole point. Scrutinize everything, find any weaknesses, build trust. It was an incredibly collaborative process designed to produce a standard that everyone could have confidence in, because everyone had a chance to kick the tires, so to speak.
That sounds intense, like a cryptographic Hunger Games.
Huh, sort of. I mean, imagine the best crypto minds on the planet putting forward their best work. They started with 15 contenders, algorithms from teams all over the world.
15?
Yep. And over 5 years, through multiple rounds of really intense analysis, public debate, performance testing, all sorts of stuff, NIST whittled it down. By August 99, they had their 5 finalists: Mars, RC6, Rhindale, Serpent, and Twofish. Each one was brilliant in its own way.
Okay, so Rhindale was one of the finalists.
Exactly. And stepping back, that whole transparent global process was just so critical. It meant the winner wasn't just clever, it was battle-hardened. It had survived scrutiny from the best attackers.
Makes sense.
So on October 2nd, 2000, NIST announced the winner, Rhindale. It was developed by 2 Belgian cryptographers, Joan Damon and Vincent Raymond. Really brilliant guys.
Rhindale, so that is AES.
Well, yes and no. Rhindale is actually a family of ciphers. It can handle different key sizes and different block sizes. What NIST did for the AES standard was select a specific subset of Rhindale. They fixed the block size at 128 bits. That's always 128 bits for AES. But they allowed for 3 different key lengths, 128, 192, or 256 bits.
Giving us AES 128, AES 192 and AES 256.
Precisely. And crucially, NIST made the algorithm open source, unclassified, and totally royalty-free.
Royalty-free, that's huge.
Immense implications both economically and strategically. It meant anyone, anywhere, could implement AES without paying fees or worrying about patents. This just fueled rapid global adoption. It created this unified security baseline everyone could build on.
So it quickly became the standard.
Exactly. It was formalized as FIPS 197 in the U.S., then adopted into international standards like ISO IEC 1803333. Game over for DES, really.
Okay, so cutting through the history, let's get back to the core. You said AES is a symmetric key block cipher. Let's break that down. What does symmetric key actually mean in practice?
Right. Symmetric key means you use the exact same secret key to both encrypt the data and decrypt it. Think of it like a physical locking key. The same key locks the box and unlocks it.
Okay, one key for both jobs.
Yep. This makes symmetric ciphers like AES really fast and efficient, especially for encrypting large amounts of data. Much faster than asymmetric encryption like RSA, where you have separate public and private keys.
But the catch is?
The catch is key distribution. Both the sender and the receiver need to have that same secret key, and you need a secure way to get it to both of them without anyone else intercepting it. Key management is a big deal with symmetric crypto.
Got it. And the block cipher part?
Block cipher means it doesn't process data 1 bit or 1 byte at a time like a stream cipher might. Instead, it works on fixed-size chunks or blocks of data.
And for AES, that block size is?
Always 128 bits. That's 16 bytes. It takes a 16-byte block of your plain text, runs it through its transformations, and spits out a 16-byte block of ciphertext.
What if my data isn't exactly 16 bytes? Or, a multiple of 16?
Good question. That's where padding comes in. If your last chunk of data is shorter than 128 bits, you add some specific, predictable padding bytes like using the PKCS7 standard to fill it out to a full block before encrypting it.
Okay, padding fills the gaps. Now, you mentioned something about the design in SPN.
Right, the Substitution-Permutation network. That's the fundamental structure of AES. It's different from DES, which use something called a Feistel network.
How is SPN different?
SPN combines two main types of operations in each round. First, substitution, replacing bytes using lookup tables called S-boxes. These provide nonlinearity, making the relationship between input and output complex. Second, permutation, shuffling the bytes around using operations like ShiftRows and MixColumns. This spreads the influence of each input bit widely.
So substitute and shuffle, basically.
Kind of, yeah, but in a very mathematically precise way. A key advantage of the SPN structure compared to Feistel network is that it can process the entire 128-bit block more easily in parallel. This is a big reason why AES is so fast, especially in hardware.
Makes sense for speed. And does this SPN design relate to security principles?
Absolutely. It's designed specifically to achieve Claude Shannon's concepts of confusion and diffusion. Confusion, mainly from the S-boxes, obscures the statistical link between the plaintext and the ciphertext. Diffusion, from the permutation steps, spreads the impact of any change in the plaintext across the entire ciphertext block.
Confusion hides patterns. Diffusion spreads changes.
You got it. Together, they make it incredibly hard for attackers to find shortcuts or statistical weaknesses.
Okay, so we have the 128-bit block size, always, and the three key sizes, 128, 192, 256 bits. Why the different key lengths? Just more security.
Pretty much it's a direct trade-off. More security versus more computational work. Longer keys mean exponentially more possible combinations, making brute force attacks even more infeasible.
But does just having a longer key automatically make it better? Or does the algorithm change too?
Good point. The core transformations remain the same, but the number of rounds of those transformations increases with the key length. Yeah, the sequence of substitution and permutation operations is repeated multiple times, or rounds. AES 128 uses 10 rounds. AES 192 uses 12 rounds, and AES 256 uses 14 rounds.
More rounds for longer keys.
Exactly. This ensures the security scales properly with the key size. Each round adds more complexity and diffusion. You also need more round keys derived from the main key 11 for AES 128, 13 for AES 192, and 15 for AES 256.
15 round keys for AES 256. Okay. And is there a standard recommendation?
AES 128 is generally considered very secure for most commercial purposes, but for really high security applications like protecting top secret government information, the U.S. government mandates AES 192, or more commonly AES 256. That tells you the level of confidence they have in the longer key variants.
All right, we've got the blueprint: symmetric block cipher, SPN structure, different key lengths and rounds. Now let's peek inside the actual machinery. How does it take my 16 bytes of data and scramble?
Okay, so imagine that 128-bit block, your 16 bytes of data. The first thing AES does is arrange it into a 4x4 grid, like a little matrix. Each cell holds 1 byte. This is called the state matrix.
A 4x4 grid. Easy enough to visualize.
Yeah, and it processes these bytes generally in column major order. So the first 4 bytes fill the first column, the next 4 fill the second, and so on. This state matrix is the canvas AES works on throughout the encryption rounds.
Okay, got the canvas. What are the paints? Is it just shuffling bits?
It's way more sophisticated than just shuffling. AES performs its operations within a special mathematical framework, a finite field called GF28, Galois field 2 to the 8.
Whoa, okay, Galois field. That sounds intense.
It sounds complex, but the concept is crucial for AES's elegance and strength. Think of it as a unique number system where all calculations involve only the 256 possible values a byte can hold. Everything stays within that range.
Like modular arithmetic, sort of.
Exactly like modular arithmetic, but for polynomials. Each byte is treated as a polynomial, and operations like addition and multiplication are done modulo a specific, fixed, irreducible polynomial. By 8 plus by 4 plus by 3 plus x plus 1.
Okay, my head hurts slightly, but I trust you, it's important.
Haha, yeah, the details are deep math. But the key takeaway is that this structure makes the operations very efficient for computers. Addition is just a simple XOR operation, and multiplication can be done with shifts and XORs. Plus, it provides the strong mathematical properties needed for security, ensuring things are reversible for decryption, but hard to predict for attackers.
Got it. Efficiency and security for math magic. So before the rounds start, you mentioned the key gets expanded.
Right, the key expansion or key schedule. You don't use your original secret key, 128, 192, or 256 bits, directly in every round. Instead, it's expanded into a series of unique 128-bit round keys.
How many round keys again?
One more than the number of rounds. So 11 round keys for AES 128, 10 rounds, 13 for AES 192, 12 rounds, and 15 for AES 256, 14 rounds. You need 1 for an initial step, 1 for each main round, and technically the last round uses 1 too.
And how does it expand the key? Is it just chopping it up?
Oh no, it's much cleverer. It's an iterative process. It takes parts of the previous round key, does some rotations, runs bytes through that S-box substitution we mentioned earlier, XORs it with a round constant called archon, which changes each round, and then XORs that result with other parts of the key schedule.
Wow, okay, so each round key depends on the previous ones.
Exactly. It creates this complex dependency chain tracing all the way back to the original secret key. This is vital. It prevents attacks where knowing one round key might help you easily find others, like related key attacks, and it thoroughly mixes the original key material throughout the entire encryption.
Key expansion sounds almost as complex as the encryption itself.
It's definitely a critical part of the security. Okay, so keys are expanded, data is in the state matrix, now we hit the rounds.
This is where the real action happens, right?
Yeah.
4 transformations.
Yes. Each main round, remember 10, 12, or 14 of them, consists of 4 steps performed in sequence, except for the very last round, which is slightly different.
Okay, step 1.
Step 1 is AddRoundKey. This is super important because it's the only step in the round that actually uses the secret key material.
Ah, the only place the key comes in directly each round.
Right. It simply takes the current 4x4 state matrix and does a bitwise XOR with the 128-bit round key specific to that round. It's a simple operation, but it's what injects the secrecy into the data for that round. It seeds the confusion and diffusion that follow.
Okay, XOR with the round key, simple enough. What's next?
Next is SubBytes, or substitute bytes. This is the main confusion step. Each of the 16 bytes in the state matrix is individually replaced with a different byte according to a fixed lookup table.
The S-box.
That's the one, the Rindale S-box. It's a pre-calculated table with 256 entries. Every possible input byte value maps to a unique output byte value.
And this S-box isn't just random.
None at all. It's mathematically constructed using that GF28 field, involves finding a multiplicative inverse, and then applying something called an affine transformation. The result is a highly nonlinear relationship between the input and output byte.
Nonlinear meaning hard to predict or reverse mathematically.
Exactly. It breaks up the nice linear relationships that attackers using techniques like linear or differential cryptanalysis love to exploit.
Yeah.
This nonlinearity is absolutely crucial for AES's security.
Okay, SubBytes swaps out all the bytes using the magic S box for confusion. Then what?
Then comes ShiftRows. This is a permutation step focused on diffusion. It shuffles the bytes within the state matrix, but specifically between columns.
How does it shuffle?
It shifts the rows of the 4x4 matrix cyclically to the left. The top row, row 0, isn't shifted at all. Row 1 is shifted left by 1 byte position. Row 2 is shifted left by 2 positions. And row 3 is shifted left by 3 positions.
So bytes from, say, the first column end up in different columns after shift rows.
Precisely. This prevents the columns from being encrypted independently of each other. If you didn't have shift rows, AES would basically be like 4 separate, much weaker ciphers running side by side on each column. Shift rows ensures changes propagate across the entire state.
Clever. Spreading the changes horizontally. What's the fourth step?
The fourth step is MixColumns. This is another diffusion step, but it works vertically, mixing data within each column.
Mixing within columns now.
Yeah.
How?
It treats each column as 4 terms of a polynomial over GF28, just like we discussed earlier. Then it multiplies this column polynomial by a fixed predefined matrix, also using that special GF28 arithmetic.
More Galois field magic.
Yeah. The math ensures that each byte in the output column depends on all 4 bytes of the input column. So a change in one input byte affects all 4 output bytes in that column.
So shift rows spreads things horizontally, MixColumns spreads things vertically?
You've got it. Combined, they create a fantastic avalanche effect. Change one single bit in the input plaintext, and after just a few rounds, roughly half the bits in the ciphertext will change in a seemingly random way. It makes it impossible to trace the influence of specific input bits.
And these 4 steps, AddRoundKey, SubBytes, shift rows, MixColumns, happen in every round.
Almost. They happen in that order for rounds 1 through 9 for AES 128. The final round, round 10, is slightly different. It includes AddRoundKey, SubBytes, and shift rows, but it omits the MixColumns step.
Why skip MixColumns at the very end?
It's a design choice for cryptographic strength and efficiency. Adding MixColumns at the end wouldn't add significant security, but would make decryption slightly more complex. The structure is carefully optimized. Also, remember, there's an initial AddRoundKey before the first round even starts.
Right, initial key mix. Okay, that whole process sounds incredibly thorough. How do you get the original data back then? Decryption.
Since it's symmetric, decryption is essentially the exact same process but run in reverse, using the inverse operations.
Inverse operation.
Yeah. You use in-shift rows, shifting rows right instead of left, in SubBytes, using an inverse S-box lookup table, and in MixColumns, multiplying by the inverse matrix in GF28.
And AddRoundKey.
AddRoundKey is its own inverse because XORing with the same value twice cancels itself out. So you still use AddRoundKey, but you apply the round keys in the reverse order, starting with the last round key and working backward.
Elegant. The same key, just run backward with inverse steps.
Exactly. It's a very neat design.
Now, all this encrypts one 128-bit block, but real data is usually much bigger. You mentioned modes of operation earlier.
Yes, modes of operation are crucial. They define how you use a block cipher like AES to encrypt messages longer than a single block, 16 bytes. The mode you choose has a massive impact on security.
Okay, give me the rundown. What's the simplest, maybe the one not to use?
That would be electronic codebook, ECB mode. It's the simplest conceptually. You just chop your message into 128-bit blocks and encrypt each block independently using the same key.
Sounds easy. What's the problem?
The problem is, if you have 2 identical plaintext blocks anywhere in your message, they will produce the exact same ciphertext blocks.
Nah. So patterns in the original data show through in the encrypted data.
Exactly. It leaks information about the structure of the plaintext. Famously, if you encrypt an image file using ECB, you can still clearly see the outline of the original image in the ciphertext, just with weird colors. It's considered hilariously insecure for most uses. Avoid ECB.
Okay, ECB equals bad. Got it. What's better?
A major improvement is cipher block chaining, CBC mode. Here, before encrypting a plaintext block, you first XOR it with the previous ciphertext block.
Getting them together.
Right. This means identical plaintext blocks will now produce different ciphertext blocks because the input to the encryption depends on what came before it. It hides those patterns much better.
What about the very first block? There's no previous ciphertext.
Good point. For the first block, you use something called an initialization vector, or furring. It's a random block of data that you XOR with the first plaintext block. This IV needs to be unique for each message encrypted with the same key, but it doesn't have to be secret. It's usually sent along with the ciphertext.
Okay, CBC sounds much better. Any downsides?
The main downside is that encryption isn't easily parallelizable. You have to encrypt block 1 before you can encrypt block 2 because block 2 needs the ciphertext of block 1. Decryption, however, can be parallelized.
Performance trade-off. What else is there?
A very popular and efficient mode is counter CTR mode. This one cleverly turns the block cipher into a stream cipher.
How's that work?
Instead of encrypting the plain text directly, you encrypt a sequence of counter values. You typically start with a nonce, a number used only once for a given key, combined with a counter, 0, 1, 2, 3. You encrypt nonce 0, then nonce 1, nonce 2, and so on, using AES.
Okay, so you're encrypting counter blocks.
Oh.
Then what?
The output of encrypting these counter blocks forms a key stream. You then simply XOR this key stream with your plaintext blocks to get the ciphertext. To decrypt, you do the exact same thing. Generate the same key stream and XOR it with the ciphertext.
Like a one-time pad almost, but generated using AES.
Exactly. The big advantage is that encrypting the counter blocks can be done completely in parallel, since encrypt nonce 0 doesn't depend on encrypt nonce 1. So CTR mode is very fast for both encryption and decryption.
Nice. Parallelizable and fast. Sounds good. Is that the best?
It's very good, but modern security often needs more than just confidentiality. It also needs integrity and authenticity proof that the message hasn't been tampered with. That's where AEAD modes come in.
AED.
Authenticated encryption with associated data. The current gold standard is Galois Counter Mode, GCM. It's built on top of CTR mode for confidentiality, but it adds a built-in mechanism to generate a message authentication code, or MS.
Omega, like a checksum or hash.
Sort of, but cryptographically secure and dependent on the secret key. The MA, often called an authentication tag, is calculated over both the ciphertext and optionally some associated data, like headers that aren't encrypted but need protection. If any bit of the ciphertext or associated data is changed, the MAC verification will fail on decryption.
So GCM gives you encryption and tamper detection in one package.
Exactly. That's why it's so widely recommended and used everywhere today. TLS 1.2 and 1.3, which powers HTTPS, modern VPNs, cloud storage like AWS S3, SSH, the list goes on. Protecting against tampering is just as vital as keeping secrets secret. GCM does both.
Okay, we've seen the intricate machinery, the roads of operation. It all sounds incredibly complex and robust, but let's zoom out again. Why fundamentally is AES considered so secure?
Yeah.
You mentioned Shannon's principles earlier, confusion and diffusion.
Right. Those are absolutely key. AES is a textbook example of implementing them effectively. The confusion comes primarily from the SubBytes step, using that nonlinear S-box. It just demolishes any simple statistical relationship between the plaintext bytes and the ciphertext bytes. You can't look at the output and easily guess anything about the input patterns.
It scrambles the meaning.
Precisely. And then diffusion, achieved brilliantly by the combination of ShiftRows and MixColumns, spreads the influence of every single input bit far and wide across the entire 128-bit block. Remember the avalanche effect. Change one bit, and half the output changes unpredictably after just a few rounds.
Spreads the change like wildfire.
Exactly. This combination is what makes it so tough for cryptanalysts. They can't isolate parts of the cipher easily, and they can't rely on simple statistical patterns. It's designed to resist those kinds of attacks from the ground up.
Beyond the design, though, there's the sheer brute force aspect. The key space. How big are we talking again?
We're talking astronomically large numbers. For AES 128, it's 2 to the power of 128 possible keys. That's about 340 undecillion keys, a 3, followed by 38 zeros.
Undecillion. I don't even know what that means other than a lot.
Haha, yeah, it's mind-bendingly huge. For AES 256, it's 2 to the power of 256. That's roughly 115 quattuorvigintillion, a 1 followed by 77 zeros.
Okay, you're just making up words now.
They're real words, I promise. The point is, trying every single key a brute force attack is just completely, utterly infeasible. Even with all the computing power on Earth working for billions of years, you wouldn't even scratch the surface of the AES 256 key space.
So when people say AES is unbreakable, they mean practically unbreakable by brute force.
Exactly. With current and foreseeable technology, you simply cannot trial the keys. It's computationally impossible within the lifespan of the universe.
But clever attackers don't always brute force, right? They look for mathematical shortcuts, flaws in the algorithm itself. How has AES held up against that kind of attack?
That's where AES really shines. It has undergone over 20 years of intense, continuous scrutiny from the best cryptographers in the world. People have been trying to find weaknesses since the day it was proposed,
Dang.
and no practical attacks have been found against the full-round versions of AES. There have been attacks on reduced-round versions, like breaking, say, 7 out of 10 rounds of AES 128. These are important academically. They help us understand the security margins, but they don't work on the real thing.
What about specific attack types like linear or differential cryptanalysis?
The S-Box was specifically designed to be resistant to those classic attacks. More advanced techniques like algebraic attacks, XSL attacks were proposed once, turned out to be either flawed or far less efficient than brute force.
I think I read about Buckleek attacks. Did they break it?
Buckleek attacks. They are the current best theoretical attacks in terms of slightly reducing the computational complexity below pure brute force. For AES 128, it reduces the work to about 2126.1 operations. For AES 256, it's about 254.4.
So tiny bit faster than brute force.
Theoretically, yes, by a small factor. But these numbers are still astronomically huge. They're computationally infeasible, overwhelmingly beyond the reach of modern computing. They don't represent a practical threat at all. The bottom line remains, no known practical attack is better than trying all the keys. Bruce Schneier said back in 2000 that no practical attack could read Rendale traffic, and that still holds true today.
And the fact that governments, like the U.S. government using it for top secret data, trust it. That says a lot too, doesn't it?
It's a massive vote of confidence. The NSA approving AES 192 and AES 256 for protecting classified information up to the top secret level means they've likely thrown everything they have at it and found it solid.
Especially compared to what came before. Why did AES win out so decisively over DES and even 3DES?
Well, DES was fundamentally broken due to its 56-bit key. Plus, its 64-bit block size was becoming a limitation, and its Feistel structure wasn't ideal for fast software implementations. 3DES, triple DDS, was a workaround basically applying DES 3 times. It boosted the effective key length to 112 or 168 bits, making it much more secure than DES, but it was slow. Really slow. Applying DES 3 times is inefficient, and it was still stuck with that 64-bit block size.
So AES was just better all around.
Pretty much. Longer keys, 128, 192, 256 bits. A larger 128-bit block size better suited for modern applications. And the SPN design, which is much faster in both hardware and software. It was a clean slate design that learned the lessons from DES and 3DS and just did everything better.
Okay, fast forward today. Are there other modern ciphers that compete with AES? I sometimes hear about SHA-20. How do they compare?
That's a great comparison. Actually highlights some interesting trade-offs. AES is a block cipher, and its biggest advantage today is often hardware acceleration. Intel's AES NI instructions, found in most modern CPUs, make AES incredibly fast.
Faster with the special hardware.
Definitely. However, implementing AES correctly in software, especially in a way that resists side-channel attacks, like timing attacks, can be tricky. SHA-20, on the other hand, is a stream cipher. It generally doesn't have dedicated hardware acceleration like AES does.
So it's slower.
Not necessarily. In pure software implementations, especially on platforms without AES hardware support, like some mobile processors or older systems, SHA-20 is often faster than AES. Its design is simpler and naturally more resistant to timing attacks in software.
Interesting. So it depends on the hardware.
Largely, yes. What you see now is often a hybrid approach. For example, in TLS for HTTPS, systems will often check if AES hardware acceleration is available. If yes, they'll likely use AES GCM because it's super fast. If not, they might fall back to SHA-20 Poly 3.0.5, which is SHA-20 combined with an authenticator similar to GCM, because it offers great performance in software.
So not strictly one winner, but choosing the right tool for the job.
Exactly. It emphasizes that the future is about smart choices, often involving co-design between algorithms and the hardware they run on. But AES, especially with hardware support, remains a dominant force.
All right, so we know AES is strong. We know how it works, more or less. But where is this digital guardian actually hiding in plain sight? You said it's everywhere. Like, where specifically am I interacting with it?
Oh, you're interacting with it constantly. Let's start with just browsing the web. Secure communications is probably the biggest area.
Like HTTPS.
Exactly. TLS, the protocol that underlies HTTPS, relies heavily on AES, particularly AES GCM these days. When you connect to your online bank or really any secure website showing that little padlock icon, chances are AES 256 GCM is encrypting all the traffic between your browser and their server. Your login details, account info, everything.
Okay, so web browsing. What else?
VPNs, virtual private networks. If you use a VPN for work or for privacy, it's almost certainly using AES to create that secure encrypted tunnel. OpenVPN, for example, frequently uses AES 256 CBC or AES 256 GCM to protect your internet traffic from prying eyes, especially on public Wi-Fi.
Makes sense. What about that public Wi-Fi itself? Is AES involved there?
Absolutely. Wireless security, your home Wi-Fi network, the one at the coffee shop, if it's using WPA2 or the newer WPA3 security standards, it's using AES. Specifically, a mode called AES CCMP encrypts all the data flying between your devices and the router.
So it stops someone in the parking lot from sniffing my Wi-Fi traffic.
That's the goal. It protects your local network communication from eavesdropping.
Okay, what about data that's not flying through the air but just sitting on my laptop? If someone steals my laptop.
That's where file and disk encryption comes in, another huge use case. If you're using Windows, BitLocker uses AES, often AES 128 or AES 256, to encrypt your entire hard drive.
Oh, right, BitLocker.
Yeah. So if someone steals the physical drive, the data is just scrambled nonsense without your password or recovery key. Apple has File Vault for macOS, which does the same thing using AES, and there are tools like VeraCrypt for cross-platform encryption. All rely on AES to protect data at rest.
What about all the stuff we store in the cloud? My photos, documents.
Yep, database and cloud storage providers use AES extensively. They encrypt your sensitive data like PII, personally identifiable information, or confidential business files when it's stored on their server.
So like Dropbox or Google Drive.
Exactly. AWS S3, Amazon's cloud storage, uses AES 256 for server-side encryption by default. Google Drive, Dropbox, Microsoft OneDrive. They all use AES to protect your files stored in the cloud, both when they're sitting there and often when they're being transferred.
Okay, that's reassuring. What about actual money changing hands, financial stuff?
Definitely. Financial transactions. Industry standards like PCI DSS, which governs credit card processing, often mandate AES for encrypting sensitive cardholder data, both in storage and transit. Even ATMs often use AES to encrypt your PIN when you enter it.
Good to know the ATM isn't just sending my PIN in the clear.
Hopefully not. And it goes right up to the highest levels. Government and military applications, as we mentioned, rely heavily on AES 256 for classified communications. Secure phones, encrypted data links, protecting state secrets. AES is the workhorse.
It's even in tiny things now, too, right? The Internet of Things?
Increasingly so. IoT and embedded systems. Think about smart home devices. Your smart lock might use AES 128 to secure the communication between your phone and the lock, ensuring only you can unlock your door. Smart meters, industrial sensors, even some medical devices use AES to protect data transmissions.
Wow. It really is everywhere.
It is. And a key enabler for this widespread use, especially in small or power-constrained devices, goes back to efficiency. Particularly, as we discussed, hardware acceleration like Intel's AES-NI, it makes strong AES encryption feasible without killing performance or battery life, allowing it to be built into almost everything.
Okay, so AES is this super strong, ubiquitous fortress. But, fortresses sometimes have weaknesses, right? We hear about breaches all the time. Can AES actually be broken? Is it ever the algorithm's fault?
That's the crucial distinction we need to keep making. As far as the global cryptographic community knows, the core AES algorithm itself, it's solid, virtually unassailable with current technology. When you hear about breaches involving AES encrypted data, the vulnerability almost always lies somewhere else.
Somewhere else. Like how it was implemented.
Exactly. Or the protocol using AES has a flaw, or there's a human error, like keys getting stolen. It's the stuff around AES, not the mathematical core.
Let's talk about those implementation issues. I've heard the term side channel attacks. What are those? They sound sneaky.
They are sneaky. Side channel attacks don't attack the AES math directly. Instead, they exploit information that the computer leaks unintentionally while it's doing the encryption.
Leaks? Like what?
Like timing information. Timing attacks measure precisely how long different cryptographic operations take. Sometimes, depending on the key bits or the data being processed, operations might take slightly different amounts of time, maybe due to how the CPU cache is used, or different paths in the software code.
Tiny differences in speed.
Nanoseconds, maybe even less. But with careful measurement and statistical analysis, attackers can sometimes infer bits of the secret key from these timing variations.
Wow. How do you defend against that?
The main defense is writing constant time code, designing the implementation so that all cryptographic operations take the exact same amount of time, regardless of the secret key or the data. It's harder to write, but it closes off that timing leak.
Okay, what other kinds of leaks are there?
There are power analysis attacks. These involve monitoring the device's electrical power consumption while it's encrypting. Different operations draw slightly different amounts of power.
You can tell what the chip is doing by watching its electricity use.
Essentially, yes. Analyzing these power fluctuations, or sometimes even the electromagnetic radiation the chip emits, can reveal the secret key. These are particularly effective against things like smart cards or simple IoT devices, but sophisticated versions can even target CPUs.
That's wild. And cache attacks, are they related to timing?
Yes, cache attacks are a specific, powerful type of timing attack. They focus on how the CPU's memory cache is used during encryption in shared environments like cloud computing, where multiple virtual machines run on the same physical hardware.
Oh.
One malicious VM could monitor how another VM running AES is accessing the cache. By seeing which parts of the cache are being hit or missed, especially during the SBox lookups in AES, the attacker can figure out bits of the key. It's a serious concern for cloud security.
So physical leaks, timing, power, cache access. What about attacks that are more mathematical, even if just theoretical?
Right, there are theoretical attacks, but again, they don't break full AES in practice. We mentioned related key attacks before. These assume the attacker can somehow get the system to encrypt data with multiple keys that are mathematically related in a specific way.
Does that happen in real life?
Rarely, and usually only if the protocol using AES is poorly designed. AES's key schedule is specifically designed to resist these. The best related key attack against full AES 256 still requires something like 2,176 operations, totally impractical.
And the big leak attacks?
Same story. They offer a slight theoretical improvement over brute force, down to maybe 2,254 for AES 256, but they are still computationally infeasible. They're interesting for cryptographers studying the absolute limits of the algorithm, but they don't pose a real threat. They're more like mathematical curiosities right now.
Okay, so it seems the algorithm itself is holding up extremely well. What about simple mistakes? The human element?
That's often the weakest link. Weak keys and IVs are a classic example. If you generate your secret key using a poor source of randomness, it might be guessable.
Like using password 123 as your AES key.
Haha. Hopefully not quite that bad, but yeah, if the random number generator used to create the key isn't truly random, the key might have hidden patterns. Same goes for the initialization vector.
Like the LIV needs to be random too. I thought it just had to be unique.
Ideally, it should be unpredictable, random, and unique for each encryption with the same key. If you reuse an IV with the same key in modes like GCM or CTR, it can completely break the security, allowing attackers to potentially recover the plaintext. Good randomness is fundamental.
And the mode of operation itself can be a problem too, right?
Absolutely. Mode-specific issues. We already hammered on ECB mode. Just don't use it. It leaks patterns, fundamentally insecure. Even CBC mode, which is much better, has a known vulnerability class called padding oracle attacks.
Padding oracle sounds mystical.
It refers to situations where the system decrypting the CBC data gives away information based on whether the padding at the end of a block is valid or not. If an attacker can repeatedly send slightly modified ciphertext blocks and observe the error messages, or even timing differences, related to padding errors, they can often decrypt the entire message piece by piece without ever knowing the key.
Wow. So even how you handle errors can be a vulnerability.
Precisely. Secure implementation requires incredible attention to detail.
Okay, the elephant in the room time, quantum computers. Are they going to kill AES?
The quantum question. It's a huge topic, lots of hype. The relevant quantum algorithm here is Grover's algorithm.
Not Shor's. I thought Shor's algorithm breaks encryption.
Shor's algorithm is devastating for asymmetric crypto, like RSA and elliptic curve cryptography, which rely on factoring or discrete logarithm problems. Grover's algorithm targets symmetric crypto like AES by speeding up the search process, essentially. Brute force.
So much faster.
Quadratically faster. Which sounds amazing, but in practice it means it effectively halves the effective key length. So an AES 128 key under a Grover's attack would have the security equivalent of only a 64-bit key.
And 64 bits.
Yeah.
That is breakable, right?
Yes, 64 bits would likely be vulnerable to a large enough quantum computer.
So AES 128 is quantum toast.
Well, here's the crucial context. First, the threat is not imminent. We currently do not have quantum computers anywhere near the scale, stability, or error correction capability needed to run Grover's algorithm effectively against AES 128. Building such a machine is a monumental engineering challenge.
So not tomorrow, but eventually.
Possibly. But second, there's a straightforward mitigation. Use a longer key. If Grover's algorithm halves the effective key length, what happens to AES 256?
Half of 256 is 128.
Exactly. Even with a hypothetical future quantum computer running Grover's algorithm, AES 256 would still offer the equivalent security of a 128-bit key today. And 128 bits is still considered very, very secure against brute force attacks, even quantum ones.
So the consensus is that AES 256 is likely quantum resistant.
That is the broad consensus among cryptographers, yes. While research continues, AES 256 appears robust enough to withstand foreseeable quantum attacks. The main focus of post-quantum cryptography, PQC research right now, is finding replacements for RSA and ECC, the asymmetric algorithms that are truly vulnerable to Shor's algorithm. AES itself is holding up much better. Claims that current quantum computers can break AES are simply not supported by mainstream expert consensus.
Right, so despite AES's core strength, and even its likely resistance to quantum attacks with AES 256, we do see breaches where encrypted data gets compromised. If it's not AES's fault, what is going wrong in these real-world incidents?
It really hammers home the point. Saying AES was broken is almost always misleading. The failures happen in the ecosystem around the cipher. Let's look at some concrete examples.
Okay, you mentioned padding oracle attacks on CBC mode earlier. Was there a famous case of that?
Definitely. The Poodle attack back in 2014 is a classic example, though it's a bit nuanced. Poodle primarily targeted the old insecure SSL 3.0 protocol.
SSL 3.0. That's ancient.
Exactly. The attack often worked by forcing a web browser and server to downgrade their connection from modern TLS to the vulnerable SSL 3.0. Once downgraded, the attacker could exploit a padding oracle vulnerability within SSL 3.0's handling of CBC mode, which might have been using AES CBC in that session, to decrypt things like session cookies.
So the vulnerability was in SSL 3.0's protocol design, not AES CBC itself.
Precisely. SSL 3.0 didn't check the padding correctly, creating the oracle. AES was just the cipher being used within that broken protocol. It highlights how protocol flaws can undermine strong crypto.
What about those side-channel attacks?
Yeah.
Have they actually been used to steal AES keys in the wild, or are they mostly lab experiments?
Oh, they've had real-world impact. Cache bleed, discovered in 2016, was quite alarming. It was a cache timing attack that successfully extracted AES keys being used inside Intel's SGX enclaves.
SGX. Weren't those supposed to be super secure, isolated areas on the chip?
They were designed to be. But cache bleed showed that even within SGX, subtle timing differences based on cache access patterns during AES operations could leak the key to software running outside the enclave. It was a serious blow to the SGX security model at the time.
Wow. And Hertzbleed more recently.
Yes, Hertzbleed in 2022 was fascinating. It showed that the dynamic frequency scaling of modern CPUs, where the chip adjusts its clock speed up and down based on workload to save power or boost performance, could also leak cryptographic keys, including AES keys.
How? Faster clock speed leaks keys.
It's incredibly subtle. The timing variations caused by the frequency changes, when correlated with the cryptographic operations, could be statistically analyzed to reveal key bits. It proved that even performance optimization features could inadvertently create side channels.
These side channels sound incredibly difficult to defend against completely.
They are a constant challenge, requiring careful hardware design and software implementation. Then you have just plain old software bugs.
Like Heartbleed. Was that an AES problem?
OpenSSL Heartbleed 2014 wasn't an AES problem directly, but it massively impacted systems using AES. Heartbleed was a devastating bug in the OpenSSL library, which is used by millions of websites for TLS HTTPS.
What did the bug do?
It was a buffer overread vulnerability. An attacker could send a malicious request and trick the server into sending back chunks of its private memory. And what was often in that memory...
Oh, no. Private keys. Session keys.
Exactly, including the temporary AES session keys being used for active HTTPS connections. So while AES itself was fine, the keys needed to decrypt the AES traffic were potentially exposed. It was a catastrophic implementation bug in the library handling the cryptography.
Underscores the importance of the whole system, not just the algorithm.
Absolutely. Another example, protocol flaws. Remember the KREC attack on WPA2 Wi-Fi security in 2017?
Vaguely, what did that do?
WPA2 uses AES, specifically AES CCMP, for encryption. KREC didn't break AES CCMP itself. Instead, it exploited a vulnerability in the WPA2 handshake process, the way devices establish the connection and agree on a key.
What was the handshake flaw?
It allowed an attacker to trick a device into reinstalling an already in-use session key. This reinstallation could force the reuse of nonces, those numbers used once, within the AES CCMP encryption.
And reusing nonces is bad.
Very bad, especially in modes like CCP or GCM. It breaks the security guarantees, allowing attackers to potentially decrypt packets, inject malicious packets, or hijack connections. Again, the flaw was in the WPA2 protocol, not the AES cipher. WPA3 fixes this specific issue.
It's a recurring theme. The protocol or implementation fails AES.
It really is. Sometimes AES is even used by the attackers. We've seen recent malware campaigns using AES for obfuscation.
Using AES to hide malware.
Yeah. For example, phishing attacks might deliver a payload that's encrypted with AES, maybe hidden inside what looks like a legitimate software package. The AES encryption makes it harder for antivirus software to detect the malicious code initially.
So AES is so strong, even the bad guys use it to hide their stuff.
It shows its effectiveness, ironically. And finally, even those purely theoretical attacks we mentioned, like that 2009 related key attack on reduced round AES 256, that was strictly an academic exercise, demonstrating a mathematical property, not a real-world threat.
So the takeaway from all these breaches seems crystal clear. AES itself is holding strong. The failures are almost always elsewhere. Stolen keys, bad protocols, leaky implementations, human error.
That's the fundamental truth of it. The fortress itself is sound. The vulnerabilities lie in how we build around it and guard the gates.
Okay, we've seen the strength, the inner workings, the applications, and crucially, where things can go wrong around AES. So wrapping this up, what are the key takeaways for ensuring AES actually does its job effectively? How do we reinforce that fortress?
It really boils down to diligence and following established cryptographic best practices. Knowing the algorithm is strong isn't enough. You have to use it correctly.
Rule number 1.
Rule number 1, absolutely. Use authenticated encryption modes, preferably AEAD modes like GCM or CCM. Don't just encrypt. Ensure integrity and authenticity, too. This protects against tampering, which is often just as dangerous as eavesdropping.
And rule number 0, maybe.
Haha, yeah, rule 0. Never, ever use ECB mode. Just don't. It's insecure, it leaks patterns. Avoid it like the plague for anything beyond encrypting a single random block.
Got it. GCM good, ECB bad. What else?
Generate a fresh, unique, and random forth for every single encryption operation when using modes that require one, like CBC, CTR, GCM. 4V reuse can completely undermine security. Don't cut corners here. Use a cryptographically secure random number generator.
Randvols check. What about performance?
Where possible, prioritize hardware acceleration. If the platform has Intel AES-NI or similar instructions, leverage them. It's not just faster. Hardware implementations are often inherently more resistant to many software-based side-channel attacks like timing attacks.
Use the dedicated hardware if you have it. Makes sense.
And perhaps the biggest challenge, often overlooked, implement robust key management. Honestly, compromised keys are probably the single biggest threat to symmetric encryption in the real world.
How do you manage keys robustly?
It's a whole discipline, but it involves secure key generation, secure storage, using hardware security module or HSMs if possible, strict access controls, who can actually get the keys, and policies for regular key rotation, changing keys periodically to limit the damage if one is compromised.
So the key is king, and you need to guard it fiercely.
Absolutely. You can have the strongest algorithm in the world, but if your key management is sloppy, your security collapses. As we often say, a cryptographically perfect algorithm cannot compensate for systemic security failures in a protocol or an organization's policies. The human factor, the process, the overall system design that's paramount.
Okay, so looking ahead then, we touched on quantum. Assuming we keep using AES 256 and manage our keys well, what's the long-term outlook? Is AES here to stay for a while?
All signs point to yes. The primary theoretical threat remains those large-scale, fault-tolerant quantum computers capable of running Grover's algorithm effectively.
Which is still a long way off.
Still seem to be quite a long way off, yes. And as we discussed, the consensus is that AES 256 provides a sufficient security margin against that foreseeable quantum threat, offering roughly 128 bits of effective security even then.
And the focus for post-quantum crypto is elsewhere?
Primarily, yes. The urgent work in PQC is replacing asymmetric algorithms like RSA and ECC for key exchange and digital signatures, as those are broken much more definitively by Shor's algorithm. NIST is currently in the final stages of standardizing new PQC algorithms for those tasks. AES itself isn't the primary concern for quantum replacement right now.
So AES looks set to remain a cornerstone of security for the foreseeable future.
That's the expectation. Its combination of security, performance, especially with hardware support, and decades of intense scrutiny make it incredibly hard to replace. It's a testament to that original open design process.
What an incredible journey AES has been on. From that open competition to being literally woven into the fabric of our digital lives. We've unpacked its origins, peered into its complex dance of bytes and transformations, and seen just how vital it is. It really is a marvel.
It truly is. And connecting it all back, AES really stands as proof of what open collaborative science can achieve. It's a robust, globally vetted algorithm that continues to be the gold standard. But as we've stressed, its theoretical strength is only realized through careful, diligent implementation and solid key management in practice.
The algorithm is strong, but security is a system.
Exactly. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. As you go about your day, using your phone, browsing online, remember AES working silently in the background. But also remember that the future of security isn't just about the algorithms. It's about that synergy between software, increasingly specialized hardware, and critically, our own vigilance, the human element. Protocols, policies, practices, they all matter immensely. So the question to ponder is, understanding all this, what steps can you take in your own digital life or maybe even professionally to be a stronger link in that crucial security chain?